Hi, everyone. Welcome to Reporters Roundtable. I'm Rafe Needleman in San Francisco. This is our show on a single tech topic each time. And this week, of course, was Apple Week. Apple just announced a new iPad called the new iPad, and also a new version of the Apple TV. Now, everybody has an iPad, according to Apple's data, and now they're all going to upgrade. But I think the more important product here at that announcement was, in fact, the Apple TV, because it affects, it has more potential from this point forward to upset the consumer electronics industry, the apps industry, the content industry, and the cable, the ISP industry. And so I want to focus today not on the iPad, which everybody talks about, but on the Apple TV. And I've got two great guests to dive into what the Apple TV means, both this product and future products, and Apple's space in the content industry, or place in the content industry, to talk about how this is all going to play out. And these guests are both CNET experts in New York. First, John Falcone, who runs reviews in New York. John, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And also Matthew Moscovic, who reviews all this stuff, again, for CNET Reviews in New York. Matthew, thanks for making the time.
Thanks for having me, Rafe.
Now, do we actually have the video working this time through? This is the second take here. Let's put it back. Smile. Hey, he's moving this time. All right, right on. Hey, Matthew, again, thanks. How... You reviewed the new Apple TV. In fact, I think you've reviewed all of the Apple TVs since they started coming out. Tell us about this product. How good is it, and should people think about getting one?
You know, the Apple TV is actually, it's one of the top boxes that's out right now. Even though Apple only calls it a hobby, it's kind of neck and neck with our editor's choice, the Roku LT, in that space. Now, Roku has a lot more content partners, so you're going to be able to, you know, watch videos from, say, Hulu Plus, which you can't watch on the Apple TV. But the killer feature on the Apple TV is really AirPlay. So if you have an iPad or an iPhone, you can stream video right to the Apple TV, and that's really nice if you're already invested in the Apple ecosystem.
Now, does Apple continue to say that Apple TV is a hobby? I know when it first came out they said that, but are they still saying that? Because it seems like an important product to Apple.
I think I saw Tim Cook said that recently in a recent event, and it is surprising, but I feel like, you know, the thing is that the Apple TV isn't quite as polished as the other products, and, you know, if they were putting more attention towards it, you would think they'd already have something like an app store, or maybe they would have integrated Siri for, say, you know, video search, because, you know, searching for things using an on-screen keyboard is still kind of a pain. So until you kind of get that full attention, I do think it does feel like a hobby, even though it's still one of the better products in that space.
John, what's your take? Is this a major product from Apple, or just kind of a side note in the CE, consumer electronics industry?
I think they're still dipping their toe in the water on this. I mean, it seems clear there's two or three things they could do to make the Apple TV box, the $99 box that they just refreshed. They just had 1080p video. They upgraded the processor, but it's really exactly the same otherwise as the existing box. A few upgrades they could make that everybody keeps begging them for is more apps or more channels, stuff like Hulu Plus or Amazon or HBO Go, all those things that are already on the Roku and on some of these competing game consoles and other little boxes. And, you know, the other thing is, do they really want to add a subscription service to this thing? That doesn't really exist outside of Hulu Plus right now, and you get kind of the feeling there's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance with Apple on this, because the more cool apps they add to the Apple TV, the less incentive you would think is there for people to buy the episodes by episodes on iTunes, for instance.
Yeah, it's really an interesting problem that I think Apple is trying to figure out with the Apple TV. I agree with you. You kind of see an inherent conflict built in there that, you know, they can bring the Apple user experience to the living room, but what people really want in the living room is content from everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think they don't want to figure out which app they have to go to get it, which is what you have to do right now with Hulu Plus is only ABC, NBC, and Fox, most stuff. You know, if you want HBO stuff, you go to HBO Go. If you want CBS stuff, you have to go to CBS.com. It's kind of a mess right now, and there's, except for iTunes, which is an, you know, pay-per-view service, basically there's not a lot of good options on the Apple TV right now.
So, Matthew, you've been looking at this thing. What's your take on consumers? I mean, you review this the way, we all review products, everybody here, including me, who does product reviews, which is, we try to put ourselves in the mind of the consumer, of the buyer. But what's your take? Is this a product that is ready for the mainstream? I know it is kind of mainstream, but I mean really mainstream. For you go into somebody's house you don't know, and chances are they're going to have one. Is this product ready for that yet?
I think it's not quite ready there to be, on the same level as, an iPhone or even an iPad. The weird thing is that, a lot of people get it primarily just as a Netflix streaming box, even though you can get that on a lot of other devices. But I think, they need to put a lot of the pieces together, like John was saying. They really need to have something like a cross-platform search or the ability to kind of use voice so that you can just say, hey, I want to watch Arrested Development, and then it goes find it, whether that's on Netflix, another service, or on iTunes. And that's kind of the big missing piece that all of these new connected TV devices have. And some are doing better than others to do it, but you get the feeling that that's what Apple's going to do to make this a mainstream product.
What's Apple going to do to make this a mainstream product?
I think they're going to have to use something like Siri in terms of being able to say, I want to watch this movie, and then it's just going to find it, whether that's on iTunes, whether that's on Netflix, or whether they add other services.
Now, go ahead.
Well, there's a little bit of that with Connect on the Xbox. You can give voice commands in search, and Google TV does a pretty good job of being able to search some other content sources, but that interface is kind of clunky, and it doesn't work as well as you'd want it to.
We're going to get back to that in a second, but I want to talk about one of the most interesting parts, and I think you'll agree with me, Matthew, one of the most important features of Apple TV, which is AirPlay. I want John's opinion on this, too. Why is AirPlay such an important thing in this product?
AirPlay is great because it's the DLNA everybody really wants.
Stop. What? DL what?
Exactly. Every networked entertainment box has this feature basically called DLNA, which stands for, start gritting your teeth now, Digital Living Network Alliance. And if you set everything up correctly, you can use your PC or something as a server to stream video and photos and audio to these boxes. AirPlay is basically an Apple-only version of that works seamlessly and well and has a cool name and doesn't confuse the heck out of people. And I'll just give you an example. When I was at my brother's house on Christmas Eve, he had his Apple TV set up, and all it was doing was pulling music from his PC, some nice holiday music, and the photo screensaver was showing all these great photos of his family and my little niece and everything, and that was just playing in the background and working seamlessly. And when he wanted to pick a different song, he popped open his iPhone, which you can use as the remote, picked a new song, and bam, it was going.
Mm-hmm. Now, Matthew,
other products can do that, but very few of them do it as well and as seamlessly as Apple TV.
Matthew, what's your take? I mean, you're the one who mentioned AirPlay here. Tell us why this matters.
Yeah, well, the thing that, we always criticize the Apple TV is the lack of content sources, but with AirPlay, you can actually get around a lot of those. Mm-hmm. So Apple TV doesn't have Pandora, but you have Pandora on your iPhone, and then you can just stream Pandora right to your Apple TV, and whether that's, Rhapsody or, some of the other music services, you can take advantage of them without having the native apps, on the Apple TV.
I want to drive a little bit more into Apple TV, into AirPlay,
unless they block them, of course, like HBO Go.
Yes.
Don't get me started on HBO Go. I am so mad at HBO Go. Can I just make a little side note here? Does anybody care if I make a sidetrack? Okay. I have what is it? I forget which device it is. Either the Roku or the Boxee. I got both of them. And one of them has HBO Go. And I was really excited because I have HBO Go on a set-top box.
I know what you're going to say.
It's blocked on Comcast.
Yes.
What?
And on Time Warner. It works. It works for Time Warner on the iPad, but not yet on the Roku.
I want to kill these guys. I don't know who to kill, but if I can figure out who to... Your days are numbered. All right, anyway. So listen, AirPlay, back to that. Now, I'm very excited when I got my new entertainment system. I got a Denon AVR or something that has AirPlay built in, and it's very exciting because I can go and I can do the Pandora or Spotify or Downcast, which is my podcast player, and just hit a button and boom, it goes straight onto my entertainment system. So it's really cool that Apple is making AirPlay available, but they're not making all of AirPlay available. That's reserved for the Apple TV. Matthew, am I right about that? And why does that matter?
Yeah, if you want to do video, yeah, you're limited to the Apple TV right now, although Boxee does have some ability to do that, and I'm not quite sure how that works because I don't think it's officially licensed, but it is interesting that they're holding that back. I don't know if that's something we'll see this year where other products can, maybe build it into an AV receiver. I think a lot of people would be interested in that. But as of right now, they are holding it back as an Apple TV exclusive feature.
So that's kind of the big reason for some people, I think, to get the Apple TV, so you can do the videos from your phone, just blast them out to the living room.
And I think we really have to mention, that Mountain Lion, the forthcoming OS X upgrade for the Macs, is also going to add full AirPlay support. So it already does audio now, but it's going to add screen mirroring, which means basically anything you see on your Mac, you should be able to project right up on the TV screen.
So Apple TV is a really core part of the whole Apple ecosystem, the walled garden where the height of the walls is variable depending on how Apple is feeling in a given year. Why is Apple being so successful at building this out, and why are the TV companies failing so miserably and the CE companies failing so bad at building products that make it so easy to incorporate content from my home movies or whatever?
I think in a lot of ways it comes down to software. When you look at the regular standard TV manufacturers like your Samsungs and your Panasonics and them, they don't get software and the user experience the same way that Apple does. So, when you use a lot of these other content portals, it's clunky, they're hard to use, it's hard to find things, and they don't feel polished. You don't see kind of the thought put into them as you do on the Apple TV, which has nice animations between things, and it's easy to just see, oh, there's movies, there's TV shows, there's music. It's very straight ahead and easy to use.
So do you guys think that Apple needs a TV? I mean, not an Apple TV puck, but an Apple TV, an actual box. Would that be a good idea for Apple? Would people buy it?
I mean, sure, people would buy it, but I don't think they really would be able to roll it out the way they want to until they could make some of these content deals. Because my joke with the Apple HD TV was always that they would show it had all these great bells and whistles, amazing interface, great industrial design, and the presentation would end with, and every show is only $3.99. And without at least more apps or at least more content or a subscription service, yes, people would still buy it, but it would have such a premium compared to, we're testing a 60-inch Sharp TV in the other room that's $1,500. I just couldn't believe how low that price was for such a gigantic television that looked really good to my casual eye. And you have to think the Apple TV would have at least, I don't know, $1,000 on that one maybe.
I'll tell you what, I would pay a premium for the content itself. $5.99 an episode if they could make the ending of Battlestar Galactica better. So one of the big parts of Apple's move here, and why I find it so weird that this whole thing is called a hobby, is because they're playing with the big boys. They're dealing with Netflix. They've done a very interesting relationship with Netflix. They're fighting with Comcast, and it's an interesting battle. Let's talk about the Netflix deal first. I don't know which of you guys is more up to speed on this, but with Apple TV now, you can not just use Netflix, but actually do your financial transactions with Netflix through Apple TV. I think that's kind of major. Either of you guys want to get into that for a bit? That would be a no. Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, they changed it so you can sign up for Netflix right through the TV screen, which you could not do before.
But this is a big deal because this puts Apple in the money collection category because now you're paying for it through your Apple account, right?
Yeah, I think it's just one less barrier to entry to having the Apple TV on your TV, seeing Netflix and saying, hey, I want to try that out. You can do it without having to, sign up on another computer, put in your credit card information, and do all that stuff. You can just use it with the same, Apple ID that you use to buy movies and TV shows on iTunes. So it just makes it easier for people to try it out, and then once you're subscribed, it'll just keep billing your account, which is of course what Netflix wants.
And Apple, by the way, will continue probably to get their cut, because anytime you use an Apple system for a payment service, they take a slice off the top. So anyway, so
Yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
I'm not exactly sure how it breaks out on the Netflix deal. I know they're taking from some content sources and not from others, but I'm sure they're going to be getting some cut for using their back end for the transactions.
Now, speaking of interesting deals with content providers, one of the other interesting things is that Comcast has said, we're not going to offer, this is about Netflix, we're not going to offer Netflix. So there seems to be this battle for who controls the content, who's the gatekeeper. Now, Apple wants to be the gatekeeper. They're opening up to Netflix. Comcast is saying, no Netflix. They'll have their own service. Do you have any sense of how this is going to play out over the next, say, 12 months for consumers when it comes to them figuring out how to get the content they want on their internet-connected living room?
I mean, I've always thought the cable companies are the ultimate barrier here because they kind of have you coming and going. They're controlling largely what you're seeing on the cable TV system, and this is the key, they're also your broadband provider for most people. So the example we always used to give is if you do finally decide to cut the cord, you chop off your TV service, you just have broadband. A month later, you get a letter from your cable provider that says, hey, we just noticed your broadband usage has gone up 4,000%. We're happy to upgrade you to the super premium plan that costs $150 instead of $50, and you're right back to the same bill you had before you chopped your cable TV service.
That's a worst case solution. What real world is that going to happen? I mean, I guess in a sense we already notice it. Where, for example, I'd love to cut the. I'm happy to pay Comcast for my my internet broadband. I'd like not to pay them for cable. But then this HBO Go block thing kind of, you're right, it puts me back in this spot where if I want to get the entertainment I'm used to, I need to continue to pay them. What can break the back of that horrible situation we're in, where we can't get the content we want and we're happy to pay for it, just not a ridiculous amount?
I mean, I think one of the interesting things is that some of these online video services are starting to actually produce their own content, like Netflix, and that actually may make things worse. I'm not sure. It seems like everything's getting more and more fragmented to the point where I am a cable cutter and I have to subscribe to several different services just to kind of put all the pieces together, and that includes having over-the-air TV to make it work. So there have been, some solutions, like a lot of people have been talking about that Aereo over-the-air TV service. And I feel like where the Apple TV kind of fits in is that, they have moved to an interface that looks a lot more like app-based. So if you had a collection of different apps through one unified interface, that may be some way to kind of push the cable companies out of it a little bit, and you can get the content you want without needing, a cable subscription.
Matthew, you just touched on a couple of really interesting points I wanted to get into. One is live content, and Aereo is kind of a part of that. None of the set-top boxes, I think with the exception of Boxee, offer a live component, either live unique content or over the air. Now, there is Aereo. I want to take a little sidetrack into Aereo. That's a really interesting little product. It's only in New York, but for people who don't know, it's a grid of individual antennas. It's bizarre that you can get your over-the-air content on. Are we ever going to see something like that on a cord cutter's box like an Apple TV?
Well, Aereo is going to be available to Roku, and I've already tested that out, and it works pretty well. So that's going to be a pretty interesting solution. Of course, it is New York only right now. And I think the big thing about Aereo is that whenever I talk to people about cutting the cord, one of the big problems is always the antenna. You got to set up an antenna in your house or in your apartment, and it's a pain. So getting rid of that antenna and just being able to use it as an app where you can watch live TV or recorded content is a pretty big hurdle that they're getting over. And assuming they don't get sued out of existence, could be a pretty major development for cord cutters.
Now, the other thing that you touched on there is apps. Roku and Boxee and your computer and your iPad, et cetera, all have apps. The Apple TV doesn't. John, Matthew, when do you think we're going to see an apps marketplace open up for the Apple TV?
As soon as they can cut the deal, basically. I mean, all the content providers want to protect their revenue stream, and as long as Apple or anybody else can, I think, more or less guarantee that that revenue stream is going to stay static or possibly even ramp up, that's when something like that could happen. But they're not going to trade, a $15 a month subscription for a $5 one. It's just not going to happen.
I don't know. If I was an app developer, I'd be pretty excited about an app marketplace for Apple TV.
By the way, Ray, if I was real fast going to point out that I believe all the three, soon four major sports networks all have live programming on Roku and other devices.
Ah, interesting.
And on the Roku, I know you can get the live Al Jazeera feed. And I think Fox News does a web-only live feed for like 5 hours a day from around 10 a.m. Eastern to 2 or 3 p.m.
So it is coming.
So there is some live content out there, and it's more a decision the content providers are making and less to do about the technology.
Yeah, and the big exception with sports always is that you can't watch any in-market content, which is, a pretty big drawback for most people.
Let's get back to the products themselves. We have mentioned briefly both the Roku and the Boxee. Matthew, give us handicap the race here. Now, as I said, I had a Boxee box lying around. It was a demo unit, and I finally got an HDTV, and I plugged it in, and I thought, wow, this does a lot of stuff, but man, is it complicated. So I went out and I got a Roku for $49, and I was like, this is an amazing product. But I got to tell you something, and this is not common wisdom. The Boxee does so much more, I find it almost worth the effort. How do the Boxee and the Roku and the Apple TV kind of play off against each other, and what are your recommendations there? We talked at the top about Roku versus Apple TV, but looking at the roadmap for these products, does Boxee have a chance? Can Roku compete if Apple decides to drop its prices to $49? Where are we going with these three products and others that might be in the market?
The big thing with the Boxee box has always been the price. It's $180 now compared to these other boxes that are $100 or $50. I think the latest thing they've brought out is that live TV dongle where you can hook up over-the-air TV and watch it through your Boxee box. That on its own isn't that exciting because you can already do that with pretty much any TV by hooking in an antenna. But they are talking about possibly adding a DVR to that. And that could make it all of a sudden worth, that price premium over the other boxes. Because if you want to cut the cord, you really do need to have a live TV component if, you want to replicate the kind of TV experience you already have. Because local sports, news, or any kind of big event like the Oscars or the Emmys, you need to have live TV to watch that.
And Roku, can it continue to fight the good fight there?
I think it can. I mean, the fact that it's only $50 for the Roku LT is pretty huge. I mean, that's, people pick them, up a couple of them just to kind of spread around their house. They have so many different content sources that you can kind of tune into kind of anything, any kind of niche content that you want to check out. I think their biggest thing is that there's so much when you go into the channel store. Is kind of overwhelming. Luckily, you can kind of filter that out for your home screen, but any way for them to make it easier to find that top level content will really help that box.
As we near the end of this discussion, I want to bring up a couple of other alternatives for people, one of which is Tivo. I have an old Tivo box. Tivo seems to be finally getting more aggressive and updating their user interface and their content deals. But the common knowledge or the common conventional wisdom is that Tivo blew it, and they are not a force in this market. What do you guys think?
I believe Matt's been, yeah.
Yeah, I've been testing the Tivo Premier box kind of as an over-the-air cord cutter solution, and the new interface is really impressive. It's a huge update from what was there before, and they do have a lot of streaming services. The big thing there is still the monthly fee, and I think that's when people talk about Tivo blew it, is that people don't want to pay, $20 a month for a Tivo subscription. Now, they have been making separate deals for cord cutters if you buy it through certain antenna websites where the fee is only $10 a month, and that's a lot more attractive. And if they can make that a standard plan, I think we could see a little bit of resurgence from Tivo, from the cord-cutting community.
Finally, one of the big options that we have only briefly touched on here, but I think is a real power in the Apple TV space, is the game console. The Xbox is, I think, the premier game console that is also a good media hub. Where do these companies, these products, PlayStation, whatever Nintendo does, where do these products fit in the Apple TV market?
I think they fit in pretty well. It's amazing how much more the PS3 and the Xbox especially. Wow, is that an old picture of me?
Yeah, we lost your video feed. We're obviously using Apple technology here. So.
But they have a lot of the same, and I think in some cases more channels and sources than the Apple TV does. And the PS3, for instance, now has NFL Sunday Ticket. Mm-hmm. So that's, it's very expensive, obviously, but it's the exact same service you'd be getting on DirecTV, which I think is really impressive and an amazing offer that didn't exist, a year ago. Mm-hmm. I think our one qualm with the Xbox, for instance, is that you still have to pay $60 a year to subscribe to Xbox Live just to get into all that video stuff. And with the Roku LT only costing $50 all in, it's kind of like, wow, that is a pretty crazy premium if you're not going to be playing like a lot of head-to-head gaming and things like that.
And these products, by the way, the hardware on the game consoles, I mean, I think the newest one you can get is 5 or 6 years old, the hardware design. The software keeps getting upgraded. So there's a lot of... We could see some pretty interesting upsets in this market pretty soon, I think.
And it's arguable that the Netflix interface on the PS3 and the Xbox is two of the best experiences out there, actually. Mm-hmm.
I just have to say this, by the way, another side note here. I have, I think, 5 devices in my living room that will stream Netflix. It's really remarkable how they... Of all the we might be talking about Apple TV, but Netflix is the one that is freaking everywhere. It's just remarkable. Too bad their content isn't as good as Amazon's.
I always, whenever it's like, oh, Comcast is going to kill off Netflix with this StreamPix thing or something, that's all fine and good, but they have to get on all those boxes first, and Netflix is literally pretty much the default thing on everything.
Yeah.
Tough to compete with.
Any final words and any recommendations for the grandma in Poughkeepsie who's looking for something that just does a little bit more than her cable company can provide?
I mean, my standard recommendation is kind of between the Apple TV and the Roku box, and it's like if you have a lot of Apple products already, the Apple TV is kind of what you want to go for. But if you're looking for a lot of different content sources, the Roku box is, extremely affordable, and it's pretty easy to use.
All right, guys. Hey, listen, thanks very much for the time. I expect we will have you both back on soon when Apple finally surprises us all by doing a TV. And you know what? I think they could do it because they would have to sell them through the Apple stores, but that is a good channel. I mean, those things are set up for selling TVs. I just believe it. So anyway, any final comments before we wrap up here? We've lost everything.
I would just say if you the fact that these prices are now $50 to $100 just makes these things a really great impulse purchase, and it's kind of hard to go wrong at that price, I would say.
Yeah, they are great. They're amazing products for the money, either a Roku or an Apple TV. John Falcone, Matthew Moscoviak, both of on CNET Reviews teams in New York. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thank you, Steve, for producing. Thanks everybody for watching live who did. We will see you all next week. Next week, a very interesting topic. We're going to be talking about new ways to do startups and invention. We have one of the founders of Kickstarter and a guy from Tech Shop where you can make your own stuff here on Reporters Roundtable talking about the future of invention. It's going to be a great show. Don't miss it. See you then.